Yo, what's up, everybody? It is Monday, September 11th, and I'm wearing my FDNY fire helmet. This is an authentic. This is a tribute to New York all firefighters and first responders. Firefighters 343 who gave their lives trying to save people on this fateful day 22 years ago. This helmet here belonged to my father. He was a New York City firefighter. He died a few years before 9/11. But after I saw all that, man, and I was down there that day. Let me take this off. This is an authentic. It's a little small on me, but this is an authentic FDNY fire helmet. It's old. This was my father's original one, a little small on me. Put it over here. Anyway, I was down there that day. I had to go down there for a meeting. I woke up, I saw on TV after the first plane had struck the North Tower, and they were kind of speculating on what happened and saying it was a small commuter plane. I was like, there's no way that's a small commuter plane. I mean, that was a massive gaping hole. And I had to get downtown. I was living in Midtown, and unbelievably, the subways were still running down towards Wall Street. So I took a train down there. By the time I got down there, the second plane had just hit the South Tower. And when I got out of the subway station, I was at the Brooklyn Bridge station. For those of you who are familiar with Manhattan, the New York City subways, I came out of the Brooklyn Bridge station, and I had a perfect vantage point of the South Tower. There were a lot of people. There was a crowd there. Everybody was kind of standing around, frozen, just looking up at the South Tower. And I'm telling you, the flames, multiple stories high flames leaping out of that building. And we all kind of just stayed there, mesmerized and in shock like everybody else. And I figured, well, there's no way this meeting is happening with all this chaos going on. But so I stood around with that crowd. We were right across from City Hall. And again, I had that view of the South Tower. I was looking up at it. And then all of a sudden, that thing started to come down. And it was like a succession of very, very loud bangs, like boom, 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 boom. You could hear each floor collapsing on the floor below in progression, like boom, 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 boom. And we all started to run. I was going up north, because I lived, in Midtown. And it was like the noise was deafening. It was almost like, it sounded like bombs going off. That boom, boom, those floors collapsing on each other, one after another. And it was crazy, man. And it was just like, then we basically, barely, I should say, outran the dust cloud that just blew in our direction as the tower collapsed. And then we were all walking uptown. There's just these crowds of people walking uptown like zombies, like you didn't hear anyone talking, like everybody was in shock and just walking like zombified, like no one could believe what had just happened, I remember stopping at a hospital thinking I was going to give blood because maybe there were going to be survivors who needed blood. I have very rare blood. I have AB negative, which is only 2% of the population. It's the rarest blood in the world. I never knew this, but I actually found out later on that hospitals keep a big supply of AB negative just because it is so rare. But nobody was to know. I stopped at what's now NYU Langone on 34th and 1st. And I couldn't give blood. They weren't looking for anything. And then I realized, well, there's not going to be any survivors from this at all. Back then it was called Bellevue, but it's changed the name to NYU Langone. Anyway, I got home And I remember for days, even weeks after that, I was able to smell like that acrid smoke that was just blowing up from ground zero, from the tip of Manhattan. It was in the air for weeks. If I opened my window in my apartment, I was able to smell it. I mean, it was in the air for weeks. But man, it's something I'm never gonna forget. It's one of those events like that you're gonna remember, or you probably remember exactly where you were at that time. It's like I'm old enough to remember when JFK was assassinated. I was in first grade doing a puppet show. I can remember that. Like, it's funny how those things just stay indelibly in your mind. This is another one of these events that's just gonna stay in everybody's head forever. And it changed our lives. It changed the world. I mean, after that, it was the war on terror, and the TSA, and you got to take your shoes off to go on a plane, and body scans and all this other bullshit. It completely changed our lives forever. The one thing good I think that came out of it, really there's nothing good, but I mean, I would say the one thing good is that if something goes down on a plane now, we're not going to all sit there like sheep. Like, we get up, people get up, and they fight back. And that never used to be the case. We were told, we were instructed, hey, if something like that happens, just sit quiet, don't create any problems. There was a protocol, and it was basically to be passive, but that's gone for good. That is gone for good, and that's something, if there's anything positive that came out of this, that's what it is, as far as I'm concerned. But a lot of negatives came out of this. Our lives are completely changed with this bullshit, with the security screenings and everything else, mass surveillance of Americans, like the Department of Homeland Security, all this stuff. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about the markets today. It's a somber day, folks. It's a somber day. My heart is with New York. My heart is with the families of the victims. I worked in that building. I worked in the World Trade Center for many years when I was a commodity trader. I was in the World Trade Center, and I actually had a friend of mine who was killed in the attacks. I didn't even know this until years after. I went down, I had a meeting at the NYMEX, and I went down to the NYMEX building, which, by the way, a few years after that whole thing happened, they moved to a new building, a very modern, upscale kind of building, away from where the trade center was. And when I walked into the lobby, I saw a plaque on the wall with names of former NYMEX members who were killed in the attacks. And I saw my friend's name. I never knew it, that he died in those attacks. So that's when it became really, really personal to me, because I didn't know anyone personally who died in there until I saw that plaque. So yeah, this is the first year, since then, since the 9/11, that I haven't been in New York City. And I used to go every single year down to ground zero and just kind of pay my respects. But anyway, so much for that. Let's talk a little bit about the market. It's kind of a quiet day. I would say the market is meandering. One thing I noticed at the end of last week was a divergence in the sentiment. Like the AAII weekly sentiment survey showed a pretty significant pickup in bullish sentiment on the part of individual investors. Now, the way I take that is I read that as a contrarian indicator. When I see bullish sentiment picking up, especially in kind of a fiscal flow environment. I don't want to say a macro environment, because the macro environment is still good. It's still good, and I've been telling you guys that the overarching picture is bullish, and it's going to stay bullish because we're going to have a consistently high level of fiscal flows over time. And this pullback that I've been forecasting now, I said that's of a seasonal cyclical nature. We're going to have a quarterly corporate tax drain on Friday. So don't get the two things confused. You got the big picture, and I've laid out a strategy for you. I said, yeah, we're going to get a pullback now into probably mid-November, then maybe another little dip in mid-December, but use those to add to your position. Or if you like to trade the market, you know, whether you're an options trader or whether you trade futures or you just trade stocks both ways, you can play this decline. So I'm giving you like a two-tier analysis here, okay? For those of you who like to use the stock market as a wealth building mechanism like I do stocks, okay? Then I use these declines to add to stock positions that I have. It's like a lifelong accumulation of good assets, all right? That's the best way I could put it. I wish I knew this when I was younger. I spent a lot of time as a trader, commodity futures trader, you know, like I said, on 4 different exchanges, and I never thought about the long term and building wealth through asset accumulation. I mean, they really should teach this in schools to kids. It's not hard. So if you're young and you got your whole life ahead of you, you know, do this. When the market goes down, you want to keep accumulating high quality assets. That's going to take care of you for the rest of your life, and it's going to take care of your family. I mean, I tend to tell you guys, or I do tell you guys, to shy away from this short-term stuff. I mean, it's not gonna work out well. That's like a gambling mentality. You're gonna get, you know, the endorphin rush from making a little score, then you're gonna give it back. I mean, it's just like the dopamine rush, right? I mean, if that's what you're after, I mean, there's maybe better ways to get it. I don't know. But I'm really trying to impress upon you guys the need for asset accumulation, good, high quality assets, and be patient. Wait for these moments when everybody's panicking and selling. And of course, you're going to see all the headlines are going to come out about, you know, oh, the Fed may raise rates again and stuff like that. I mean, just ignore that stuff. That's all bullshit. That's all nothing. And you want to build positions in these high quality companies that are leaders in their field, and just like, that's how you build wealth. So I was saying that the sentiment got mixed. AAII sentiment popped up, bullish sentiment popped up last week. But if you look at the options market, there was very high put volume last week, and that's indicative of more of a pessimistic or a cautious or a bearish outlook. So you got this kind of dichotomy going on between individual investors and options traders. So I think what that's going to lead to is like a day like today when you're kind of meandering. We opened strong, we came down, we bounced back a little bit. In the end, not a big deal. I mean, percentage-wise, like, not much happened, okay? And the big day is going to be Friday and thereafter, because that's when the tax drain is going to occur. So I'm telling you guys all this like I always do, and I'm just laying out the map for you. And, you know, this is very, very actionable information. And I see people have been posting comments up here thanking me about how, you know, I've helped them in navigating the markets and the economy and the economic outlook. And, you know, it's very gratifying to me. I want you to know I really appreciate that. And but I think you really need to still go and sign up for MMT Trader, because it's more in depth. And it's not even about that it's more in depth. I mean, the key thing here, and I've said this a million times, is learning. It's becoming more informed. It's becoming more educated. It's having a higher degree of understanding about how the economy functions, how the markets are going to move based on the macroeconomic picture. It's a learning process. And like I said, I never stop learning. I always try to learn. I read lots of books. And I'm not talking about books on the market. My learning in the market, to believe it or not, is number one, actively participating. Number two, or maybe number one, is compiling this report every week. I said that me, the activity of putting together this report makes me really have to delve deeply into my process. Like, what do I do? It's a fantastic exercise in understanding actually what you need, what you do. Like, to be able to talk about that, to be able to communicate that to others. You got to go deep inside of what you're doing, and it gives you a profound understanding of your process. To me, this has been invaluable. And I'm trying to pass this along to you guys. All right? I'm trying to pass this along to you guys. And I've said here a number of times that if I look back, for example, at the old videos from years ago, and all the critics and the haters and the stuff, and how the commentary has changed. It's been remarkable, and that to me shows an evolution in, like, the type of people who come here and watch this channel, and also the level of understanding. It's gone way, way up. And that's another thing that's extremely gratifying to me. But remember, never stop the learning process. Never stop the learning process. That is so important. You got to keep doing that. So commitment, persistence, resilience, learning all the time. Those are 4 things right there that are, you cannot succeed without those things. So let's keep it going, folks. Today's a somber day, 9/11. Let's remember that day. Let's honor those who perished and those who tried to help the victims. And onward from here. See you tomorrow. Bye.